Could you stay off your phone for an hour? Hi, how are you? I don't think I could. Actually, I take that back. I could stay off my phone for an hour because I have on occasion. But the idea of going 2 hours without looking at my phone, 3 hours, 4 hours, a whole day without looking at my phone, I don't think I've done that since I got a smartphone. Could you? I'm not sure it's possible. I was thinking about this the other day. When I go on walks, when I sit on the couch, when I'm making these videos, when I'm in the shower, yeah, I'm without my phone. But I'm always thinking, I need to check back with my phone because what have I missed? There's so much going on in the world now, and it just feels like everything's speeding up, and it's just going and going, and what news is happening now, and what chaotic things are happening. It's almost like I have to stay informed, otherwise I'm going to feel out of control. And I'm just curious if you feel the same way. How long could you stay off your phone? How long do you stay off your phone? Even if I just need to, just check in. Okay, did anything happen? And even if something did happen, what am I going to do about it? Nothing. It's just, I like to be informed. I like to be on top of things. I like to know what's going on. And I started thinking about this because of Star Wars, of course. Every thought I basically have comes from Star Wars, or starts there. Because I'm a Star Wars fan, it's just the way it is. Mainly the original trilogy from 1977, 1980, and 1983. Everything else is just kind of icing on the cake, in my personal opinion. But Empire Strikes Back, at the end, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, Han is frozen in carbonite. And he's frozen like this. Just a side thing I was thinking about. Han Solo is frozen like this. So he goes into the freezing thing, his hand's at his side, but when he comes out, he's like this. Which means that when the freezing thing happened, he went... So, I don't know what happened in that little freezing chamber that made him go, ah! But I suppose this is better than his hands protecting his junk. When he's the thing, he comes out, his hands are... I think that'd be funny. Anyway, I was thinking about Han frozen in the carbonite, so he goes to Jabba. How long between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi when they finally rescue him? How long was that a year? Was that a month? How long between those two things? I like to think that it was only like a week or two, but it may have been longer. But the thing is, while Han was frozen in carbonite, he had some time to think. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't on his computer. He just had some time to just hang out, literally, and think. A lot of silence. And can you handle silence? All right, that's enough. We won't go through. We won't go too long. But how long can you handle silence? Put your phone down, you're not listening to a podcast, you're not watching TV, you're not watching a movie, you're not talking with friends, you're not texting. You're just sitting there or standing there or eating. When's the last time you ate in silence? When's the last time you went to sleep in total silence? I can't sleep in total silence. My mind won't shut off. It keeps going. And oh my God, it's less now than it was before, but it used to be as like, because I write my silly thoughts. And I'd lay in bed and I'd think of a new one. Oh, I got to write that down. If I don't, maybe I'll remember it in the morning. No, I better write it down. So I have to flip over, turn on the light, grab the paper, write it down, and then go back to sleep. And then I think of another one. And then, so it got to the point where I just had a digital recorder, audio recorder, and I just okay, Santa Claus goes to Mars. How's he going to do that? And the next morning I just go through and I type everything that I digitally recorded audio. But I can't sleep in silence. I always have to have a sitcom playing lightly in the background. And can you handle silence anymore? And back to the Han frozen in carbonite thing, because when he came out of carbonite, he was a different character. He was still Han, but he was more mature. You know, he said, you know, when he went into the carbonite, she said, "I love you," and he's like, "I know." And later in the movie, he said, "I love you." How did he change so much to be able to finally say that? I think it's his thinking time in the carbonite. He had a lot of time to think about his life, what he's gone through. And I did this as an Instagram video, but I just wanted to expand it on it a little bit more. That he changed as a person, as a character. You know, he had some time to think. He, you know, contemplated his own immortality or mortality. You know, it's like, maybe I'll be stuck in this carbonite forever. Maybe they'll never come rescue me. But he had faith in his friends that they'd come rescue him, I think. But it was more like, you know, now that I have time to think, what do I think? So he thought about his life, thought about his future, thought about Leia, how much he valued her, how much he valued his friends, how much he's changed as a person, how much he would miss these people if he never saw them again. And I think he was so grateful to get out of that carbonite freeze and so glad to see Leia. I mean, when he finally saw Leia, he was overwhelmed with joy. I mean, he changed as a person. And you know, then he saw Chewie, he's like, "I missed you, pal. I'm all right." He changed as a character. Not too much, I mean, but enough that by the end of the Return of the Jedi, he could say, "I love you" first. And be mature enough to, you know, walk away when Leia said she loved Luke. And so, I just, you know, silence is important. That time where we just sit there and contemplate and don't hear anything is important to just think. Thinking time. I don't know if it was Bob Dylan who said it or somebody said it, but you need input and output. If you're constantly having input, you have no time to mull over what has been inputted and then sort of digest it and ruminate about it and think about it and then cherry pick interesting things about it and then create. And then you do your output. You know, you have all this stuff, like Dylan was living in New York City and having all this input, and then he'd output all these songs. But in between that, he needed time to ruminate, or any artist does. You need, or anybody does, you need that silent time. And I'm curious, and I'm almost worried that people don't have silent time anymore. We're always on the phones or listening to a podcast while I'm setting up these lights, while I'm getting this set ready. I'm listening to a podcast. I'm usually listening to The Rewatchables or Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, because it's humorous and enjoyable. And today I was listening to Rewatchables talk about the movie Best in Show, the Christopher Guest movie. And because it's light and it gets me in the mood of being upbeat. But if I just had silence, then my mind could go in 20 different places, and some of it might not be good, because I'm constantly checking on my phone to see what broke in the world, what's going wrong, what do we need to be on high alert about, because I don't know what the future's going to bring, and the future's just getting weirder and crazier and more out of hand. And you know, when I'm doing this social media, I'm an upbeat person because I generally am upbeat and I'm hopeful, but the world is so freaking chaotic that I don't necessarily know if I have anxiety. My therapist sort of thinks I do. But I'm just, I wouldn't say I worry. I just want to be prepared, and I'm overly cautious and concerned about things. And so I'm constantly checking my phone to see what's happening. And another thing I was thinking about is that when I do have silence, I'm curious if you hear silence different than I do. Experience silence. In the sense that when I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, we had silence. There was no internet. We had radio, television, and video games. That's what we had. And the rest of the time, we didn't have a podcast to listen to. The radio was on. But it was only on sometimes. It wasn't on all the time. And we weren't checking stuff on our phones. We had lives. Sorry to be blunt, we had lives. We were living. We would go to concert and actually watch the concert and experience it, not try to I almost said the F word. Not try to record the damn thing. You know, we just experienced it. And I don't know if you experience things, if you're younger than I am, but you grew up. If you're younger than I am, you grew up with the phones. You grew up with the internet. You grew up with even more stuff to distract you. And I'm curious if when you do have silence, do you experience a greater loss than I do? Because we got used to silence. When you have silence, is it a bigger deal? I'm curious by that, how the generations change, how the different generations deal with silence when there's no technology going on. What else did I want to say? There was an episode of How I Met Your Mother where they're all sitting at the table, and they made a point that when there was no phones, they would sit there and have a conversation of what's the most popular food in the world. And they argued, and they spent an hour arguing. And then when they got phones, they just looked it up and said, oh, it's bread. So when we want to know something, we just look it up on our phones, which is extremely helpful and valuable and keeps us in the know, which is great, but it also hinders discussion. And the only way I'm able to write my silly thoughts or any of my content is that, and my books, is I have silence. I just sit and think. The amount of silly thoughts and realizations of how I should be writing my novels comes from when I'm in the shower or in a walk, when I'm not on my phone. Every once in a while, I listen to something, on a podcast. It's like, oh, it sparks an idea. I should rewrite my second act. That reminds me, with that information, that's good. And that's helpful, listening to stuff. But mostly it comes from just thinking about stuff, wondering. How often do you wonder? Do you take time to wonder? Anyway, this is just things I'm thinking about today. So, how long could you go without your phone? Could you go an hour, 2 hours, without looking at your phone, without going online, without being aware of anything else going on in the world, without texting your friends? Could you go 3 hours, 4 hours? Could you go a whole day? Could you go 2 days? Could you go a week? There's no way. Well, one reason is because I'm a content creator. I put stuff online. So that's not a possibility unless I just schedule everything and then take a week off. How long could you do it? Would you need to do it? Do you constantly have to be on a phone? Not because you're addicted to it or something like that, but because you need to for work, or you need to for your social groups. You need to be in communication with your friends or coworkers, whatever. But if you didn't, how long could you just be uninformed about things? And is that healthier? I don't know. It's such a complex subject. I'm sure there's a million videos and podcast episodes about it. But, what is next? Where are we going with all this? Will there ever be silence? Are we getting to a point where there won't be silence at all? We're going to have those implants put in our brains, which is not a far-fetched, far-off thing. Because when people start putting the data chips biologically in their heads, is that the turning point where those people who do that become quicker, faster, more superior, and then we all have to do it in order to keep up. I'm not worried, but I'm overly cautious and concerned and interested and fascinated and confused about what is going to happen, and yet hopeful. I'm still staying hopeful. Where do you think technology will go? How long could you stay off your phone? And what do you think Han thought about while he was frozen in carbonite? Anyway, these are just things I was thinking about today, and I would love to know your thoughts on this. And I wish you great joy and great happiness in everything you do, and lots of time for you to wonder and think about things without technology on occasion. So anyway, I hope you have a fantastic week, and thank you for listening to me just ramble about my thoughts about technology in the future. All right, see ya.